Dopamine swipe, dopamine swipe. Followers, likes, double tap. Now they control your life, control your life. Dopamine swipe, dopamine.
What is going on? Welcome to the 817 podcast. Jimmy, what's good?
Not much.
That is true. This is the 817 podcast where we highlight trends every Monday morning in Fort Worth, Tarrant County around business, culture, and politics. Obviously, this one's going to be heavy on the politics and what's going on after the mayoral election. Texas fight is real.
Yeah. So if you weren't aware, around like 11:15 last night was when the results from all of the precincts got reported. I didn't stay up for it, so I just had disappointing news.
Yeah, I was like texting you, and you weren't even like responding. I was like, oh, maybe he's like, I was like worried about you. I'm like, is he like in a corner, like, you know, just like shivering and they have a blanket over him?
Fortunately not.
And there's like 8 rooms, you know.
But we're going to talk today about the elections that aren't going to a runoff, the elections that are going to a runoff, and maybe what it says about the future of Fort Worth and the votership we have right now. Do you have any like headline takes from all of this?
I mean, let's stay positive for a little bit. You know, like Dr. Bird, you know, no fly zone, baby.
Yeah, no more Dr. Bird signs.
Yeah. No fly zone. So that's good. Hell, I was hell of impressed by that many people voted for Steve Pinate. Like,
yeah,
very impressive. Like, that's like 10%. So that's kind of crazy.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
But yeah, also impressive.
Yeah.
But neither are in a runoff. And so that's a really positive thing.
Yeah.
So we will start with going over city council districts that are not going to a runoff. The way that it works is that one candidate has to receive 50% plus one vote in order to win outright. And that, with so many candidates in so many races, that didn't happen very often. But District 2, I mean, Carlos Flores, the incumbent, really wiped the field. I was a little surprised. I think we were both really excited about Jen Sardui and all that they had to offer. But Flores really just came in strong.
Well, you know, Flores, I mean, you know, male Hispanic, I mean, but also a conservative Republican. That works here in Fort Worth.
Yeah.
And I think, like, if you know very little in Fort Worth, that also is like an easy name to vote for.
Yeah.
I mean, so it makes sense.
Incumbent.
Yeah. And Sardui is progressive. And what I do think Sardui hopefully can do is help Mrs. Peoples with some marketing or something. Because based off of her votes compared to her perception, like, and how she was running a campaign, she did a great job. And I think people who are running now can use those resources.
Yeah, absolutely. District 3, I mean, Michael Crane, this is a crowded field. I feel like there was definitely potential for this to, you know, be a little bit closer, but Michael Crane took 8,100 out of just over 11,000 votes. So he is was the chief of staff for Dr. Bird, has a lot of experience doing that, so maybe it's not that surprising, but to this, I wasn't necessarily expecting a win to this extent.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, he was most backed. His website, I would argue, would be the best website of all candidates, and a talented dude when you look at his resume and history. Really looking forward to talk to him about just want to get his experience as being the director to Dr. Bird.
Yeah, so he is the first new member of city council. District 4, Carrie Moon, I mean, this is close. He almost did not get 50%, 3,700 out of 7,300. But Carrie Moon is back.
Carrie Careless Moon.
That's right. Thank you, Star Telegram, for endorsing him again for some reason. You got what you wanted. So Carrie Moon back on city council. Gina Bivens, I mean, really another blowout in District 5, 3,600 out of 5,700 votes. It really didn't seem like she was going to have much of a contest at all. And that is it for races that will not go to a runoff. So that's we've still got District 6, District 7, District 8, and District 9.
Oh, yeah. So Beck didn't get.
No,
Jordan.
she missed by 30, 40 votes.
By the way, there's a guy in District 9 who's super inspiring. Literally, you guys need to somehow, I'm going to put it in the description. You got to watch the District 9 debate. And it was a guy named Doyle C. Fine. He got 84 votes. And he's this old white guy who if you were going to be biased, you'd be like, uh-oh, who's this guy? And he's like the sweetest human on the planet. And if more white men were like Doyle, the world would be a better place. But he super was inspiring. And shout out to you, Doyle.
You're the reason that there is a runoff. And that's exciting too. So thank you, Doyle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now getting to races that do have a runoff. First, we'll start with Texas 6. We'll start with the U.S. House of Representatives. And, I mean, this is wild. We knew there was going to be a runoff just because of how crowded the field was. But both candidates that made the runoff are Republican, are part of the GOP. Sanchez, who had run against Ron Wright before and it made pretty close races, she missed the runoff by less than 400 votes. That was the difference in her making the runoff versus Jake Elzy. So the candidates are Susan Wright, the widow of the late Ron Wright, and Jake Elzy.
And Susan got Trump's endorsement, but did Elzy no, he got his is Rick Perry. So his endorsement's from Rick Perry.
Yes.
So it's two types of, it's different Republicans going after each other. So that's going to be still an interesting race, but yes, depressing for progressives.
Which Trump waited really until the last minute in a super crowded race, then came out, endorsed Susan, and I mean, she won first by almost 5,000 votes, by 6 percentage points. So who knows the way that goes? What thoughts do you have about Texas 6?
I mean, Texas is just, our Republican conservative stretch and how we district our areas is just made for it to be one hand behind your back. And then I also think it was a crowded, Democratic options there that if you would have had maybe a Lassiter kind of staying in the other race, or some type of thing, that could have made the difference.
Yeah, I really do wonder, because District 7 was a close race. It would have been a tough race, but I wonder what would have happened if Sean Lassiter had decided to stay in that race. She got almost 7,000 votes in the Texas 6 runoff, which probably would have been split between Sanchez, Allison, Lydia Bean.
All three of those spent over $200,000.
Yeah,
and
Sanchez would absolutely be in the runoff if any of those candidates had decided not to run. So that's the pro and con of having a lot of options versus being able to narrow down beforehand and actually funnel into one candidate.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it still looks like it would have been a Republican spanking.
Yeah, I would say most likely a Democrat would have gotten within 3 or 4 points if they put on a really great show. So it maybe just fast tracked the inevitability of that. So we'll track back to City of Fort Worth City Council. Probably the most interesting race left is for District 6.
Oh, yeah.
So incumbent Jungus Jordan led the vote, but did not get 50%. Jared Williams and Tiesa Leggett really, I mean, they split votes. They both had a very substantial, solid showing. It'll be Jungus versus Jared in the runoff, and that's a seat that could definitely flip.
Oh, yeah. Because if you look at the totals there, right, the totals between Tiesa and Jared is 40, 50, over 55%. So, right, if Tiesa, I believe both African American. I know Dr. Jared Williams is. We didn't get the chance to interview Tiesa. Yep, Tiesa. So like I know, and then I also know their kind of campaign was very similar based off their website. So
if you voted for her,
yeah,
don't see this as like a major loss. Like get out and vote again because they did really have an incredible chance to flip that seat.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about in a little bit, how important that seat is going to be on the makeup of city council this year.
Hopefully Tiesa comes out and just endorses Jared and tells her, because she did a great job getting people out. So getting them to say, hey, let's get behind Jared.
Next is District 7, which Lee Henderson was the progressive candidate. He came in third. So we have a runoff between Zeb Pent and Leonard Firestone. I hadn't been following District 7 super closely, but I was kind of surprised to see Zeb beat Firestone.
Yeah. But that will go to a runoff, though, correct?
Yeah, so that goes to a runoff between those two. Almost 11,000 people from that district voted this time. So, I mean, I feel like that's one that could really go either way. Firestone, obviously, super wealthy, super well-funded. So maybe that makes a bigger difference now in the runoff versus beforehand. But I don't know. Lee Henderson had some pretty strong words to say about Zeb Pent in his concession today. Do you have that up? Do you want to read it?
Oh, I can get it, but it sounds like it was basically around the same kind of concepts when it comes to the fear of Dr. Bird or like the fear of Penate.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I think we should look more into. But yeah, basically, he said Zeb Pent is unquestionably dangerous to our city. His lack of Fort Worth values make him the wrong choice in this race and for public office altogether. I believe that Fort Worth deserves more from our leaders than what Pent will deliver. And he's like, I'm ready to, like, it looks like he's ready to do whatever possible and get maybe assist with Firestone and his district.
Yeah. So even if you're not excited about voting for Firestone, if you were someone who supported Lee Henderson, that seems to be the way that he is going.
Yep.
With that. And then District 8, our district, this is the closest race. And I mean, I feel like we couldn't have necessarily gone wrong with any of these candidates, but Chris Nettles pulled in 2352 out of 5,100 votes. Kelly Allen Gray, the incumbent, pulled in 2230. A difference of 122 votes between the two.
Yeah.
That's razor thin.
Yeah. And we were also, correct me if I'm wrong, the lowest voter turnout district. Is this correct? By a lot? No, I guess 5 too. Like 5 was pretty low as well.
5 was low. District 2 was significantly lower than either of them.
Okay.
Which there's something to be said about.
That is interesting.
The areas that are so heavily minority are the ones that are struggling with voting. So I don't think that's by coincidence at all.
Yeah, it's that's big facts.
So that's a runoff, and with only 100 vote difference last time, I mean, who knows what's going to happen? We were both on the Chris Nettles train. I hope that he is able to pull this out. But we've got a little more supporting of him to do.
I feel like we can get Nettles on the pod.
Yeah, let's reach out and ask.
Cool.
Yeah. And then last for city council is District 9, which we touched on earlier. Elizabeth Beck, I mean, really blew away the field, but did not get enough for 50%. I would just mental math say that she is at like 47, 48%. So she will be in a runoff very narrowly with Fernando Peralta, who beat Jared Sloan by 97 votes.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I thought that Beck was the front runner, but I did not think by this much.
Yeah, I mean, but she was backed. I mean, what always gets me scared when the conservatives who have to endorse all districts, and then in the progressive district they have to pick somebody. And I mean, Sloan is, I believe, based off of his endorsement, he got one of, I believe, a mayor. So he was a Republican candidate, but everyone, like the Star Telegram, picked Beck. So I'm interested to see, like, is she like a corporate?
Yeah, I think part of the problem with that is that a lot of the time the Star Telegram publications are trying to pick who is going to win to give themselves credibility. Like, look, we're endorsing if you get our endorsement, you're going to win. So why don't you lobby to us, maybe give us some money, get us to endorse you. So I think their focus is less on who they think the best candidate is and is more on who they think is actually going to win the race and currying favor with them before they get into office. Yeah. So that's how I read into stuff like that.
That's cool. But I mean, I watched the District 9 conversation because I guess I was weird like that. But Fernando was really impressive. There's nothing wrong with Beck either. I mean, District 9 just really had a lot of great leaders, honestly. I felt like there was a lot of great people there.
Yeah. And Doyle Fine.
Yeah, Doyle Fine. Please, if I'm telling you, I'll put it in the description. And what was beautiful about Doyle Fine in the District 9 debate was basically at the end, you had kind of a chance to say kind of the last words. And there is three minorities who are running for District 9, I believe. There were three male candidates. Doyle basically at the end said, like, we need representation and I feel hopeful about Fort Worth. And he basically just pointed at Fernando and the other two guys and saying, like, support everything these guys are saying. And their vision is real for Fort Worth. And it was just like a beautiful piece for him to acknowledge the importance of representation. And, so it was, I legit teared. I think I showed you a second time I was going to tear again. And so it was awesome.
I mean, it really is something for somebody to dedicate time, energy, and money to being in the race, only to use it as a platform to elevate minority voices. Yeah. I think that's something that was really incredible.
Yeah. District 9 debate is worth the watch because of Doyle Fine. And what's beautiful about him, you would judge him and be like, this guy,
yeah. Who's this guy on stage?
And it says, like, don't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah. So Southside members replacing Ann Zeta, you are voting between Elizabeth Beck and Fernando Peralta. Peralta's got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
Let's see if he can close that gap some. And then last, definitely not least, is the Fort Worth mayoral election. And I'll start by saying over 66,000 people voted in this election. That is a 13.7% voter turnout.
There you go.
Which is terrible, but it is better than we have done. But if we're just comparing to the 2020 election where we had like 60% of people vote, there's 44.3% of people out there somewhere that did not see it worth their time, or 46.3, sorry, did not see it as worth their time to come vote in this election. So find those people. Let's find those people. Let's find out why they didn't vote, what barriers they had, and let's get them to the polls because Deborah Peoples is going to need some help.
Oh, yeah.
So Deborah Peoples actually did win the largest share of the vote with 22,000 out of the 66,000 votes. Maddie Parker came in second with 20,500. But if you add together Maddie Parker and Brian Bird versus Ann Zeta and Deborah Peoples, Maddie's coming out on top. So Deborah's got a lot of work to do. One, to hold on to Ann's votes, and two, to bridge the gap that she needs to hopefully get Bird's people not to vote. I don't know. I mean, I feel like this is an uphill battle for her.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, if you're looking at Zeta was 8.6% plus Deborah, it's a little bit over, 42%. And then Maddie Briner at 44, 45%. And then you're not, I know Panate took 10% of the group. We don't think Panate's group would go out and vote if it wasn't for Panate, and maybe the same for Bird. Like maybe there's some of that because Bird did a lot of dicking on Maddie. So
he definitely, it seemed like his goal was to win or make sure that his people didn't support anybody else. So I could see a number of his voters not turning out again.
If Panate's voters don't show up and Brian Bird's, some of them don't vote again, and Zeta's people vote for Deborah, I mean, there's a chance.
There's a chance. I think that both of us are looking at this as a disappointing result because we're just not seeing the Fort Worth of the presidential or Senate election show up once again. And we're not seeing the minority majority city represented in the way these votes have come out. And so I think it's like, hey, let's celebrate that a progressive candidate led the way in the mayoral election. But when you really break it down, she's not in a great spot to win a runoff.
Yeah. And I think the toughest part too is what you're really seeing at work is also like power, right? You're just seeing how power works and how control works. And, we're still really young. I mean, this was our third, fourth mayoral election that we probably voted for, max, because we were probably super ignorant still when we were in college. And so it's just like, you just realize how much work have to happen and how much is going against you. I mean, the amount of PAC donors to Parker compared to Peoples is huge. And it's just everything else that's going against anyone who goes against the establishment. It's just a real thing. And that's to me what this shows is there's an establishment and it's doing everything it can to stay the way it wants to stay.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what you and I were trying to process before we started recording, is that this is the point. Like, this is why Texas and Fort Worth hold off-cycle elections when people aren't paying attention and really don't know what's going on. Like, when we come out of results like this, not feeling energized, not feeling excited, that's the goal.
Yeah.
The goal is to maintain that power structure and to keep things in place. And so when informed people like you who are listening to this see these results and think, man, this is a bummer, like, that's the point. So as frustrating as it is now, like, we can't lose hope in what we can still fight for. Even if we see it as an uphill battle, it's one worth going after.
Yeah. And the greatest thing we have on our side is time, right? And if you look at the time curve where we're all going, we're the hockey stick growth. We're going up to the right. And so a lot of the things in power right now, they're holding on for the now, and they know it's breaking. And I think we got to keep on pushing that envelope of showing. And then the other big thing, honestly, it's like Parker County and Denton County, like Fort Worth is historically set up to know, like, let's get as far out as possible so we can stay behaving like a suburb. But if you actually take the metro, the actual city, where everyone, the loop, it's not even close. And so that's what we're fighting against. And I think this podcast is an example of that fight. And I also would like to go with, I'm going to let you pass it back to you. For me, is as someone who's constantly trying to go through information and trying to get through my own biases, what I'm trying to come to accept is that, like, you can love and dislike things in everyone, right? Like when we endorsed Ann, we had positives and negatives for every single one of these candidates. And I am genuinely happy that it's Peoples and Parker rather than Byrd and Peoples. So I'm genuinely excited, but there's a point of now you have to be we have to show, like, as a podcast, we want to be people's biggest fans and see people's biggest potential for Fort Worth, but also we want to be the greatest clapback and let you know, like, yo, we're not going to let that slide. Because I think that's the best way to go through news.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And one piece I want to highlight was I thought the Fort Worth Report did an exceptional job with their, like, results piece about the election, including quotes from the, like, Texas State GOP saying, like, we're coming in on this election.
Oh, yeah.
Like, this is not a nonpartisan thing anymore. And we can't, both candidates might try and say that, especially Parker is trying.
Oh, yeah.
Parker and Betsy Price are really trying to push Deborah Peoples as this, like, partisan person who's just so wrong for Fort Worth. But, like, that's just totally
false.
BS.
Yeah.
The Texas GOP is out here like, we are not going to lose Fort Worth. We are going to throw all of our resources at this like it was a national election.
Absolutely.
So this is, wheels are off. Like, we're headed into an absolute bloodbath. I would not be surprised to see people like Julian Castro, Beto O'Rourke start to descend on Fort Worth because of the resources that the Texas GOP is saying they're going to commit to this. So I really appreciated from that piece that they highlighted that, instead of, I feel like other publications have tried to sort of cover that up and let Price and Parker have that grandstand of, oh, we're not partisan. You didn't see me on Fox News talking about something that I love that Trump did. Like,
yeah.
That's not for Fort Worth. Like, that is for Fort Worth, and that's happening whether they want to acknowledge it or not.
And that's what Fort Worth does. That, you know, and it's, everyone acts nice, because if you act nice and you rebel, then you looked at as the problem. And when really, but the problem's behind the curtains, that they, oh no, let's everything's okay. Like,
yeah, howdy, y'all.
Yeah.
Y'all means all.
Yeah, and it's and you know, I'm generally like, you know, I was like, okay, well, let me go look at this, you know, Lola's event, right? Like what went down, like, you know, checked out the stories and checked out what happened, like what was the excitement around Parker. And, you know, Parker's campaign had 56 posts, IG stories, and I went through all 56, and not one person of color. Not one. But you're saying everyone together?
Not even the token one.
Yeah. It's like no community. Oh, I'm about all Fort Worth. And it's literally all white people there. And that, like, that to me is like, if you're in any place in your life, anyone, this is for all of us, and it's only white people, realize you're not in an American experience. That's not the American experience. You're in a privileged or very unique experience that isn't actual embodiment of America. And that is what that looked like to me. That was an embodiment of Fort Worth.
Yeah.
So that's the kicker for me with that. But again, no Brian Byrd, no Steve Panate. This is I'm excited. Deborah has a lot of work from she has to be exponential. You know, she has to tell a story, and she has to create fear. Like, she has to somehow find a way to create fear. So people go out and vote. I think 71% of Tarrant County voted not because of Biden. They were afraid of Trump.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to, like you said, get Julian, get Beto. I mean, Leon Bridges did he was at the National Democratic Convention. And you need that. You need it all. You need to be exponential. And that is to really get this going.
Yeah. Like, let's really get the national spotlight on her somehow.
Yeah.
But we want to break down why a couple of these runoffs are going to be so important. And if you're not aware, City Council has 9 seats. That's 8 districts plus the mayor. And they get to vote on what happens in the city. Obviously, it's not an even number, so there are not ties. And I'm just going to run through what the potential breakdown of City Council will be. District 2, conservative. I won't say Republican and Democrat because they're technically nonpartisan. I'll say conservative and progressive. District 2, conservative, 1-1-0. District 3, conservative, 2-0. District 4, conservative, 3-0. District 5, Gina's kind of a wild card. We'll call her independent.
She likes that POA money, though.
So, yeah, she does like the POA money. So we'll go 3-0-1, and that's important. District 6, this is the most important race remaining. If Jared Williams can take that seat from Jungus Jordan, we're at 3-1-1.
Yeah.
District 7, whether it's Pent or Firestone, we've got conservative, so 4-1-1. District 8, either Kelly Allen Gray or Chris Nettles will lean progressive. That's 4-2-1. District 9, Beck or Peralta, 4-3-1. So now we're down to mayor. If that's Deborah Peoples, that's 4-4-1. Who is Gina Bivens going to be sucking up to and siding with in a 4-4-1 scenario? Carlos Flores, Michael Crane, Carrie Moon, or the mayor of Fort Worth, Deborah Peoples?
Yeah.
To me, in many scenarios, that turns 5-4 progressive. But if you have Jungus Jordan win, then you're at 5-3-1, and that's with Peoples winning.
If you have Parker win.
If you have Parker win, you're at 6-2-1.
Yeah.
Where's Gina gonna go?
Yeah.
Not to the losing side that much.
Yeah.
And even if she does, it doesn't
and
matter.
Pour those too. It's first time city council, so you got to like build those relationships.
Yeah. So while there is maybe some to feel defeated about just by the number of votes for conservative candidates for mayor versus the number of votes for progressive candidates, they're like, we got to fight. Like, we got to stand up and try and make this as close as possible, see if Peoples could get pushed over the finish line, because it will make a massive difference on the makeup of this city council.
Yeah. Yeah. Good analysis.
So Jared Williams, just raw vote wise between him and Tiesa, should win that runoff. And that is the most vital race remaining outside of mayor.
And let's be clear. We'll put the description to Dr. Jared Williams. If this guy doesn't excite you, this guy is Fort Worth, grew up in District 6, parents, went to the church, raised in the church there, got a PhD he's 31 years old. He went and played sports, got a PhD. He's a shining star here in Fort Worth. And that's that's awesome. I think that's like, I feel like Jared's just a true shining star. And not only him winning District 6 would be helpful, I think that is a catapult to even greater things for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think he is a guy who absolutely could be running for mayor sometime
Absolutely.
soon, running for U.S. House.
Yeah.
Like, he is absolutely a person who could represent Fort Worth on a national landscape very
Easily.
soon.
Yeah.
So he is the type of person you want representing you.
Yeah.
But we'll obviously have more to come in the next few weeks as we work towards the June 5th runoff. But that's just sort of how we're digesting things right now, digesting the results. We'd love to hear from any of you if you have opinions on how you feel like things shook out, if you're feeling encouraged, if you're feeling depressed, frustrated. I would say overall, we are excited that Bird and Panate are not in the runoff. That's kind of like the baseline. Like, we just had to clear that hurdle.
Yeah, but this goes back to what I said about you can love and challenge everyone, right? Like, there's many things I rave about both candidates. We just got to make tough decisions on what is most important. And that's what we all have to navigate, especially if you're a progressive in a city like Fort Worth. You got to make choices of what can you live with or what can you not live with. And that's just like decisions everywhere. So I would like to know your take on the Anzeta kind of, how it panned out. What I think it you got to realize, I mean, we're 30-year-olds who read the paper, like,
don't bump me into
you're not 30 yet?
I'm not 30 yet.
Oh,
Get
man.
out of here.
Gosh.
Old man.
So so I just think about like, how the toughest part too is like how you might be so different than like the majority of people in your age or who cares about this, right? The average age of someone who voted last time, which I'm really interested to see what the average age this time is. I don't think it's any different. I think it's going to be like
Probably
66 again.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And so, but then that shows like me and you, it's like, who are you and I actually talking to in the sense of like, this Anzeta thing to me was like, I think everyone who is maybe like a intellectual progressive, probably voted for Ann. And then also like, but yeah, I mean, I was actually like the fact that like Steve outperformed, like that was kind of discouraging. Like that means there's more.
It made me very sad for Ann, for somebody who has invested a ton in the city, cares a lot about the city, and has very clear ideas of where the city needs to go. It made me sad for her. But I mean, I love Ann. I think she is an incredibly sweet person who is a visionary for Fort Worth. And I hope that after she gets the chance to rest and recover and decompress a little bit, that she comes out firing. If I were Peoples or Parker, I would want Anzeta in the room with me, helping execute on a number of her plans. I think that she is an incredible asset to the city and someone whose talents need to be leveraged, even if she's not in a mayor or city council office.
Yeah. You want to head to wins and losses?
Yeah, let's do it. You want to start with your loss?
Yeah, let's start with the losses. So I guess for me, I'm going to go with the loss being the census report. So yes, Texas won 2 seats, but we were actually expecting 3. And so this gives Republicans a lot of power when it comes to, redistricting and making Texas. It's just putting more of a grip hold on the Republican Party with the power of Texas, because this is a 10-year event. And so it also impacts like federal funding to Texas.
They shot themselves in the foot.
Yeah.
They shot all of us in the foot by intentionally not dedicating resources to making sure especially Latino communities, filled out the census. And because of that, it is expected that our population, as well as Florida and Arizona, are significantly underrepresented because when the census came out, we didn't have the numbers that we know of people living here because we didn't want them to fill out the census. So, like, yeah, it's like you didn't.
Yeah, 50% of Florida, Texas, Arizona's growth is Hispanics, and there is not a massive miss. Like if you look at the census report completion, that does not show representation.
Yeah, which it's like they're getting their way in that these are probably people that also maybe aren't voting because they're not being reached out to. They're kind of being swept under the rug, but you also miss out on that representation. So it was an interesting double-edged sword for the GOP, and it is definitely a loss that Texas didn't get another one of those seats.
What is your loss?
My loss, man, the weather, especially the hailstorm. I mean, I didn't see hail. Did you see hail?
No.
But like seeing the videos of people up in like the Hazlitt area, Brooke has a friend that she works with who said that it literally felt like baseballs were like raining down on top of them. Like it sounded like everything in their house was being broken. Because it was just like you were being inundated with the softball-sized hail. From the Star-Telegram, caused millions of dollars in damage. So far, 7,500 insurance claims have been filed. Obviously, like we're not even recovered from the big winter storm that was also this week named as the largest mass casualty event from carbon monoxide poisoning ever of all time. And everyone's just walking away from that without any sort of repercussion.
Voter fraud.
Yeah. We need to catch the 2 cases of Trump's voter fraud. That was, it feels like we could not have a worse weather season than we have had in the last few months.
I have a guilty confession of an evil thought that I had while that was going on. Because it was all happening in the burbs, and I was like, it's happening around voting time. I was like, well, hopefully now this means these people aren't going to go vote. But you still did, so good job. Good job, you guys still voted. But
see, we're gonna shout out civic duty whether you vote the way we want you to or not. But it also comes with the caveat that EJ hopes that you got hailed on.
But the also thing that was interesting, Bud said it on the news about how Texas's I guess approval of Biden is low. But this happened during his speech. So we actually didn't even really watch it, but it's interesting how like that impacts, that could have impacted Biden's cause we don't have a lot of Democratic models in Texas. That's another big problem. It's like, who's our person really? So, it was a chance for for us to listen. And instead we had to watch the Weather Channel, and keep up with the hail.
Interesting. I didn't put those two together.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and go with my win. So we also had the Tarrant County Regional Water District election. The 3 seats went to incumbents Leah King and James Hill, and then the 3rd went to Mary Kelleher. My win is that Jack Stevens, the board president, certified asshole, came in last place. And so the Panther Island project that has obviously been incredibly mismanaged, just really been a drain on the city and county, is finally going into new hands. And who knows what's going to happen with that, but it's at least exciting to see something change up a little bit in an election where maybe there wasn't as much change as we were hoping. people came out and they made it known that Jack Stevens was last place.
I love that. My win actually is super, man. This was a great, hidden gem, report by Nitish Basnet from the Fort Worth Report. It was about the title of it is Meet Fort Worth's Biggest History Buff, who also is holding mayoral candidates accountable. Now, for us, I can't believe we never heard of this guy. At least I've never heard of him. But Larry O'Neill is an open history book of Fort Worth. He runs, get this, he runs a 114,000 member strong Facebook group called Facebook Memories. And in the group, they post old photos and people talk about history of Fort Worth. And he even has a little museum in like an auto shop, I believe, where it actually has hours that you can go, and it's like $10 a ticket. And O'Neill himself, who's like early 70s, talks about the history and walks you through it. And I guess he had some uncles or people who are also like, I guess maybe journalists or reporters. And so he just has a lot of history going back on it. But it just was a great article. I'm also going to put it in the description for you. And me and my wife look to actually capitalize on going to that and checking it out, because that just seems like what a hidden gem. And kudos to the Fort Worth Report to like tell Larry's story.
Yeah, that's awesome. I had never heard of him either, so I'm glad that they shed some light on him, and we can go visit him sometime.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Cool, people. Well, thank you for listening to the 817 podcasts. We're going to keep you updated. Again, anything from politics, business, culture, about the growth and the future of Fort Worth. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and share it with a friend. And also get ready for the runoff as we need to continue to do a lot of work.
Yeah, thanks for listening. We've got some exciting interviews coming up over the next few weeks, and we'll keep you tuned in for any major happenings for the runoff on June 5th.
Now they control your life, control your life.